Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to another episode of the Holistic Center, the podcast that talks about what does ancient wisdom have to offer us today, or what has the ancient ones leave us today in this new modern era of fast-paced digital life, and of course, a lot of addictions to social media and things like that. It's not all bad; it's all good. Well, as long as you can kind of take a step back and understand what you're doing. I have to say that I certainly do enjoy taking walks every day outside in the forest with my two chocolate Labradors. That helps me reset on a daily basis. My name is Nicholas Zard, and well, I've been preoccupied with these questions ever since I was born, or maybe hardwired a special way to always look for these ancient schools of thoughts and techniques and what have they left behind. And I actually found out they have left a lot of things behind. And if you've been following this podcast, we're about to close the series on Hermetic philosophy, which basically spans 7 articles. I didn't think I was going to write that many. And it's such a complicated topic, a very huge umbrella that recoups a lot of different things. And every time I learn something more when I do research or when I talk about it. But today I want to talk about something else. And I want to talk about something that's been very difficult to do, a very difficult decision to make, something very emotional, something very deep. And that is, when do you pull the plug? When do you draw the line and say this no longer works? And this is a very interesting thing that happened to me. For the past 20 years, I've been a consultant and a journalist in an industry around mobility, transportation, and it's around electric propulsion, right? So I was one of the first people to write about electric vehicles. And it's been great. I was dreaming about the future, and I was invited to write for a lot of different outlets, print and online. I was invited to travel the world. I went to China, went to see their EVs. It was wonderful. And in 2014, I switched over and I started getting involved with what we used to call electric air mobility. Think of those flying cars and air taxis. And again, I was welcomed all over the world and it was wonderful. But 20 years later, something, became too hard to not think about it, too hard to not look at it, is that it just wasn't financially viable. And so even these podcasts, and I've had another podcast that has lasted a year and 4 months, was great. A lot of kudos, a lot of wonderful accolades from behind the scenes, one of the last two surviving ones in the industry. And I'm deciding to stop it. I'm deciding to say, all right, well, enough is enough. But it wasn't that easy. It wasn't a decision I just made and just walked away with it, right? It actually took years to get to that point, and years of asking myself, is this worth it? Is this not worth it? And so I want to talk a little bit about what happened, because I thought it was very therapeutic to go through the process that I went through. And maybe some of you might be in a similar situation. It might not be about your career, it could be personal, it could be a lot of different things. But I started really just paying attention to the telltale signs, right? I wasn't happy. I wasn't really doing what I love doing. I was still very engaged in the industry. And yes, it's doing great things. It's making transportation cleaner and more efficient, hopefully more affordable. But at one point or another, I started also realizing that a lot of people were moving on and I wasn't moving part of that. And also all the doors that used to be open were now not really open anymore. I noticed a lot of closed doors, closed windows. I even noticed companies asking me to pay to go talk at an event. And I was like, I don't sell anything. You can't make me pay. And they used to pay for us. They used to travel and dine us and everything. But then it started changing. And so, as more and more of these, I don't want to say negative aspects happen, but as more and more of these obstacles of sorts started to happen, more and more I became disillusioned. And yeah, a lot of emotions came up. And even today, it's a cocktail of emotions, a little bit of sadness, even some slight anger, or I'm mad, and a lot of different questions, wondering, why did I continue this long for 20 years to push through in an industry? and I never really made my mark, or at least financially sustainable enough to continue doing this. Somewhere along the line, the one thing that I did realize is I had never talked to the human inside of me. Now, bear with me. We're used to thinking of us as spirits having a human experience. And I think that's partly right, but we're also humans having a spiritual experience. And that's something we kind of tend to forget sometimes. And that's what I was trying to write in this article. How is your human doing? When was the last time you sat down and looked at the human? Don't give it any excuses or anything else. Just listen to the human and say, hey, how are you doing? And it dawned on me that for 60 years, I had never done that. For 60 years, I had jumped on airplanes, not really knowing where it would all lead me. Of course, I knew where the airplane was landing, but not exactly where my career was going. And well, the human followed through. The human delivered. The human did everything. The human kept me on my feet days on end, kept me talking, kept me engaged, but never once did I ask how it was doing. And in fact, I enjoyed more partying and anything that had anything to do with, hey, how are you doing, human? And so I had that epiphany last night at about midnight when I couldn't sleep. And I realized that, you know what? It's time. Oh, it was a difficult decision to make. It's time. It's time to pull the plug. It's time to pull the plug on the website. It's been around for 3 years, but the traffic really hasn't grown the way I wanted to. It's time to pull the plug on the podcast. It's well known, well loved, but I am still not finding sponsors, so I'm not going to continue this forever. It's time to pull the plug on my career. I don't even know how I'm going to rewrite my LinkedIn profile, especially after having worked so hard for it. And so this article, and I wanted you all to walk away with that idea of honor the human being. Don't just treat it as a vessel. Don't just treat it as a tool to have your spiritual experience down here in the physical and material world. Don't run so quickly into 5D that you forget about this 3D experience, because it is very important. In other words, like the Buddhists have said, don't kill the ego. Nobody's ever said that. Only people who didn't understand said that. The ego is important. It is part of our lives. It helps us. It moves us forward. It shields us from things that we're not ready to deal with yet. And the human is the one behind it all, quietly doing everything. Think of it also like your body. Your body is very resilient. Your body, my gosh, my body has gone through so many things. I've done martial arts most of my life, and I can attest to it. It hurts. And I've done a lot of rugby. I've done a lot of different things, and I've put my body through hell. I was an avid skier for a long time. Definitely thrills and sensations I've had. And at 60, I'm tired. I'm worn out. And I've decided that, or I realized that I enjoy doing these podcasts over here with a Holistic Center way, way more than I was doing it with the other podcasts, which is strange because I really do love that industry a lot. But, after a while, when you don't see the elevator coming back, you kind of have to go, all right, well, it's my time to go away. So what is the next chapter? Well, the next chapter is very simple, and it might seem like a cop out, sort of trading the big dream for a spreadsheet. But my wife and I are looking to buy a business. Yeah, a regular old boring business. And I don't mean that as a way of demeaning people who are working around us, but to buy a business, maybe an electric shop, maybe a carpet cleaning shop, something that is local, maybe even statewide or even domestic. It doesn't really matter, but something with real people working to make their lives better. And then so we're looking for businesses that are doing well with customers and obviously with cash, been around for about 5 years, but that are technologically starved, because this is the part where I can come in. I understand technology really well, but I also understand the human aspect of technology and how humans have to interact with it. I've been using AI for, well, a good year plus now. Actually, way longer than that, but seriously, for a good year plus. I've used every platform. I finally settled on Claude. You might have seen the last article I just came out with. And I've been also working on how do I use this AI for my benefit. In other words, how do I get to use it before eventually it gets to use me? This hopefully will resonate with you. So, this was just to say that this has been a very difficult transition, and it started in full earnest around the 1st of January when I reached out to all the projects I was involved with that were going nowhere, and I said, guys, I'm out of here. This is all great ideas, but we've become a factory of ideas with no translation or real tangible results out there, and that does not satisfy me at all, on top of which it's not financially rewardable. And when you start to put out more money than you're making, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's frustrating because I've learned so much. My expertise is well understood and well known, and I now will have to transition that into something else. So it's also very emotional, and it's a very sad moment to walk away from a big dream that I had for 20 years. And as you might have seen, the title on the article is Big Dreams Die Slowly. And with that, I will bid you farewell until next time, and we'll talk again soon. But thank you for watching this, and please subscribe. That helps us a lot. That helps us move up the numbers a little bit. At one point, we'll be looking for sponsors, and hopefully, well, this podcast will find more sponsors than the other podcasts that we've had. We hope that you do enjoy the tidbits that we're producing for you, and that you enjoy. And when I say we, by the way, it's really me and all the support I have around me. It's really myself working with Claude most of the time, a little bit with Perplexity. But we're doing this because I think it's high time that we look at what has worked really well in our societies and our previous societies, and what can we bring forward today, and how can we use all this technology to our benefits, not to be used by it. So subscribe, and share, and let us know your thoughts. How do you draw the line? How do you say enough is enough? And how do you get to that point? But mostly, do you leave enough space for the human inside of you? Do you talk to the human inside of you? Those are questions I'd love to hear from you guys. Thank you, and we'll talk to you soon again.